Starting with the latest coming in from Ethiopia, a new report, a shocking one, by Amnesty International has shed light on the horrific war crimes carried out by the Tigrayan rebels in Ethiopia. This includes sexual and physical assault on several women. The report says that Tigrayan rebels raped, robbed and beat up several women during an attack on a town in Ethiopia's Amhara region. It is the latest disturbing glimpse into the war-torn country. Ethiopia has been embroiled in a civil war for the past year. The investigation draws on interviews with 16 sexual assault survivors in a town in Amhara. It found that the assaults took place in August during an offensive by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, with 14 of the 16 women interviewed saying that they were gang raped by the rebels, in some cases at gunpoint with their children watching. Government officials in Amhara told Amnesty that more than 70 women reported rapes in the town of Nefas Mucha. The TPLF ruled over the town for 9 days. Amnesty further said that most of the women interviewed suffered from health problems since the hospital where they wanted to go to treatment had been completely destroyed in the TPLF offensive. Now, this is not the first time that reports of massacres and assaults have been reported since the conflict began in November last year. Thousands of people have been killed, more than 2 million displaced, and a joint investigation by the UN Rights Office and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission found evidence of serious abuses by all sides in the conflict, with some violations amounting to crimes against humanity. The conflict also shows no signs of ending as of now. The TPLF and its allies have claimed several victories in recent weeks, capturing towns just 400 kilometers from Addis Ababa, and have not ruled out marching to the capital. But the Ethiopian government maintains that the rebels' claims are exaggerated. Now, for more on the ongoing conflict in Ethiopia, Coletta Vanjohi now joins us live from Addis Ababa. Coletta, thanks so much for joining us at this hour. This is indeed a very shocking report coming from Amnesty International, which exposes the horrific war crimes carried out by the rebels in Ethiopia. What more can you tell us about the same?
Well, the report, first of all, has been termed as biased by the Tigray People's Liberation Front. We saw the spokesperson of the rebel group saying that it kind of puts the TPLF as the villains and the government as the victim. Well, but it kind of just projects what already other reports have said. If we go by the recently released human rights report that was released in joint collaboration with the Ethiopia Human Rights Commission, it is evident that what the Amnesty International is saying happened, just that for it has focused on the Tigray People's Liberation Front. But other entities have also done other investigations. People have spoken out and have said that yes, sexual gender-based violence happened, rape happened, and other crimes against humanity happened in the past year of the war. So it kind of highlights what people have already been talking about in terms of crimes against humanity and all this, but just that it focused on the rebel group.
Right. Now, Coletta, we're also getting reports that at least 16 United Nations local staff members have been detained in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, where you're reporting from as of now. And this comes amid reports of widespread arrests of ethnic Tigrayans. Can you confirm the same and also give us more details?
What we know is very limited details, just from the United Nations spokesperson who talked about 22 had been detained earlier, 6 were released, and now 16 they're still talking about. A few hours ago they were talking about 16 being detained. Well, the UN says it is talking to the government of Ethiopia to understand the circumstances around the arrest, as well as to ensure that the UN officials are released. I mean, the UN is a bit skeptical. I mean, when it was asked about the issue of maybe these officials being ethnically targeted, and it kind of declined to respond to that. But the basic thing is that the UN says it's working around the clock to ensure that its staff and their relatives, if there are any, are released. But also, as we're talking, we've seen the UN also highlighting and flagging up that around more than 70 drivers who were contracted, especially by the World Food Programme, to do some work around the northern region, have also been detained in an area around the northern region. So yes, so the UN now has to talk to the government to see what faults these people had, and at the end of the day hope that they are released.
My final question for you, Coletta, before we wrap up our discussion. We've been tracking the precarious situation in Ethiopia in the past 1 year. How do you see this crisis resolving, if at all? The biggest victims or casualties seem to be women and children. And the biggest question is, will the rebels take control of the capital?
Well, what we have now is a more complicated case, according to different analysts. The UN also and the African Union are looking at it as a more complicated case. But there is a window of hope, if I would use those words, same words that were used by the African Union as well as the US Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa. A small window of hope for maybe mediation. I mean, the AU is on the ground, has spoken and negotiating with both, looking at both sides, both the warring factions, speaking to them to see how people can come to the table, maybe in whatever form. We know the US is putting a lot of pressure. The international community is talking about it. Then on the other side, we've got threats from the rebels, the two groups, the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the Oromo Liberation Army, that they have signed an agreement with, saying that they might, they are willing to, or they're planning to enter the capital. We had threats back. We've had a few threats, days ago. Nobody knows if that will happen. Nobody knows when that will happen. But we know under the state of emergency, the government is beefing up security, as well as encouraging civilians to also beef up their own security. So yes, it's kind of complicated. No one knows if mediation will happen or when it will happen, but there are issues on the ground with different agencies trying especially to ensure that the African Union takes the lead and encourages both parties to come to the table.
Coletta Wanjohi, thank you so much for joining us at this hour on WION from Addis Ababa. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.